I play Steve Wozniak. He is the co-founder of Apple Computers, and I think some would argue that he was the person who kind of conceived of the notion that like a computer was a thing that like a regular person could have, and not just like, you know, NASA or something like that. It would be like saying like everyone should have a locomotive, like, and he built one that everyone could have.
I now want a locomotive.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I could make one.
Yeah, would you also tell me about their sort of fluctuating relationship? The fact that Steve is one of the few guys that can and does call him out in the movie and can. And...
Yeah. In the movie, he is one of the few people. In real life, I don't think it ever happened quite like that. But in the movie, Steve Wozniak is one of the few people who does kind of try to forcefully extract some decency out of Steve Jobs' character, you know. And it's all things that were real. And that's what Wozniak was actually said that to me after he saw the movie, is that like he did feel as though the Apple II wasn't given enough credit. He did feel as though people were treated poorly. He did feel as though you know, the next computer was going to fail, but he just never had the guts to say those things to Steve Jobs, basically, because he was scared. But he said it was cathartic to see what it would have been like if he did have the guts.
He's grateful to you.
Yes.
Did you spend a lot of time with him? And perhaps you can give me a snapshot of your preparation for the movie anyway.
I spent some time with him. My preparation mostly was to like, my goal was to just like serve the movie, you know, and there's a line where, you know, trying to do too much of like a Wozniak impression would not have been serving the movie. It would have been serving like my own vanity, which I do plenty, trust me. So, and in the movie, Wozniak isn't, again, written exactly like how he is in real life. So we rehearsed a lot for the movie, which I'm not used to. Usually we have a couple days. This had weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of rehearsal. Every act had several weeks of rehearsal. So during that time, we were just able to talk about it and hypothesize. Why would he say this? Why would he say this? Why would he be feeling this? Do you think he did this? Do you think he meant this? Do you think he knew? Do you think he was resentful? And that process was very helpful for me, especially with a script that you couldn't change. And so what you do if a line isn't working and you can't change it is you just talk about it until it makes sense, basically. And that process, I really enjoyed, actually. And I think it just forced you to think a lot about, like, who is this guy? Why would he say these things? What would he be feeling in this situation in a way where, maybe we don't normally.
As an actor and obviously as an accomplished writer yourself, I mean, what are the joys of getting an Aaron Sorkin script? They are kind of unique, I guess.
Yeah, it was really exciting. It was a lot of words. That was the first thing I saw. I just remember opening it being like, oh man, it's just like wall to wall dialogue at times, which is great, and I don't mind that. The scripts we write have a lot of dialogue and are pretty dialogue driven. It's in a different way, but so I'm a fan of like dialogue driven scenes, and it's written really well. So it's not that, if you can remember it, it's not that challenging to deliver it, because it's written in such a way where if the rhythms are right and the other actors are good, and they all are obviously, then it really it plays very naturally, which was nice. So yeah, it was fun to do. It's like being given like an amazing car to drive around in. Like I think, yeah, I get a lot of credit, but the car does most of the work. There was some anxiety because, again, yeah, there's wall-to-wall scenes. And some of the scenes are very long, 12 pages. Some was, I think, one scene we did, and like that's like 15 minutes of just like talking. And yeah, so there was a lot of anxiety about memorizing the lines. And me and Kate were watching the movie in Telluride a few weeks ago, and we were sitting next to each other. And it's true, like I was still nervous that I was going to forget the lines as I was watching myself deliver them. Like, and I still probably know all of them because of how embedded they are in my brain out of fear that I wouldn't be able to retain them. I would read it over and over. My wife, it was funny, like I would make my wife read the Steve Jobs part. And it's funny because when she was watching the movie, she's like, it's weird because I kind of know a lot of the scenes because I read them so many times with you.
It'd be remiss of us not to talk about Michael well, both Michaels are great, obviously, but obviously Fassbender is the lead and is kind of special. Perhaps you could give me your take on how impressed you were.
It was very impressive. I'd met Michael a few times over the years, and we talked about wanting to work together. I never thought it would be in like one of his types of movies. I always thought, if anything, I would convince him to like slum it in an R-rated comedy or something like that. But I was thrilled when we got the chance to work together. It was very impressive to watch. Again, like, I mean, as much dialogue as I had, he had 100 times that much, and it was truly like the focus was incredible, but at the same time he was very nice and affable and easy to he wasn't too weird in like an actory weird way.
Like they can be these tests. And Danny, can we quickly talk about him? It's a very 187-page script. There's quite a lot of onus on the director to keep everything else moving as everyone else is sort of talking. So perhaps you could sort of elaborate.
It's interesting because the movie is very visually striking and has a lot of shots, and the editing is incredibly impressive. But during the filming, it felt very. It didn't feel very regimented, which can happen sometimes with a movie that's so visually stylized. It felt very loose, and that. Not loose in that we had to say the same things every time, but as far as the blocking and where we could go and when we could go there, we really had a lot of freedom, and watching it was actually an amazing experience because it looked so different than I thought it would. And I think Danny had like a secret plan that like we didn't know about or need to know about. But I'm just thrilled I got to work with him. The fact that he knows my name is pretty impressive to me.
Nice. Did you know much about Steve Jobs and the Apple world prior to taking the movie? Because he's a character where people have very strong characters, a person that people have very sort of strong opinions about, you realise as you research it. I just wondered what you knew about.
I didn't know much. I'd watched some of those keynotes and stuff like that. I knew as much as your average, mildly educated person, partially educated person.
If you don't want to, then we don't have to. But do you have any opinion on Steve Jobs now that you've sort of spent this time? I know he's a fictionalized version of him, but just...
I don't know if I have any more insight into what he was actually like now than I did before the movie. I mean, again, it's a fictionalized version, so I don't know. Maybe I'll watch that documentary.